Okay, I am so excited. I've made it to the Saturday Live this week. I'm Dr. Suri-Chung Khalsa, and I'm delighted to be sharing with you this week vegan mac and cheese, which hands down is probably one of the majority of people I know, one of their favorites. And so I'm going to kind of walk you through it as best I can. We're going to talk a little bit about vegan cheese and vegan cheese options. How you can vary this. There are nut-free versions. Also, how this one is a little bit less calorie dense because we're going to be using butternut squash. So thanks for tuning in this week, and I'm delighted to share with you butternut squash vegan mac and cheese. Now, first thing I wanted to point out is that I've had a hectic week. I don't know, has anybody else here had kind of one of those hectic weeks? So yeah, just say I'm feeling it in the comments section. But we're all kind of in this together, and I'm hoping that as time is going forward, we're going to be finding more connection and less division. That's the intention I'm holding. And certainly that applies to food and food paradigms as well. So I welcome everyone into my kitchen, no matter what their eating preferences are, and we try to work with that. And so I'm excited to share some of these principles with you today. So why don't you, if you're here and you have friends who you think might enjoy this, feel free to share this. Feel free to tag them. They can always join in, jump in, make their own posts. And I'll be keeping an eye on comments as we go along. And it's always a learning adventure for me with some of this technology. And of course, I've just crashed the app. It's kind of like I said, it's really been that week. But let's get started here. So we are going to, I'm going to sort of be sharing with you some of the tips of the trade here. And I'm just going to point out, let's see if the camera will focus. Woohoo! It's focused on this kale here. So I'm going to talk first a little bit about roasting butternut squash. And butternut squash is something that I'm a big fan of. And one of the things that I love to do is just throw this into the tags on and all, throw this into the oven at 350 degrees. And then out comes this beautiful roasted butternut squash. And some of you have seen me do this before, but I'm just going to take the skin off. And in some ways, the skin is just going to peel right off. And so you're going to be able to see that. It's beautiful, easy to do. And then you're going to have all this wonderful butternut squash that you can use for all kinds of different things. And then I'm just going to take this sharp knife, and we'll just finish taking the skin off. And then this will be ready for burritos, for vegan mac and cheese, for, butternut squash soup. I think some people even put it into desserts because it has kind of a sweet flavor. So you can roast it, put a little bit of cinnamon and nutmeg and maple syrup. And so you can see it's got this wonderful translucent quality. Butternut squash also pairs really well with sage. And so we can see that here. So I'm going to just, because we're going to be pureeing this, we're not going to have to do too much chopping. So this was something, I threw in the fridge a day or two ago. And now we have it all kind of ready for us. So I'm going to just set that butternut squash to the side here. Now the next thing I want to talk about is kind of the piece that has to do with the cashews. So let's kind of scan through here. We've got our overhead camera working here finally. And I'm going to show you. So a lot of times people don't have time to soak the cashews, or they're busy. They've got a lot of other things literally on their plate. And so I want to show you kind of a fun tip here for making quick cashew cream. And I was supposed to have some cashews that were going to be delivered, but they were missing from the delivery, grocery delivery. And so I had to run out and get them this morning. And I wanted to just point out that usually what I'll do is I'll soak these cashews overnight. And, a lot of times that has a real benefit in terms of making them easier to puree. So this is a little workaround. We're going to have some boiling water here in a minute. And this is going to provide us with an ability to make the so with these cashews, having the boiling water is going to give us the ability to make them soft, make them a little bit easier to use. So I'm going to show you all how to do that here in a second. So while this water is getting ready to boil, I am just going to talk a little bit about the different elements that can come across in vegan cheese. So cashews are sort of the mainstay, for lack of a better term. They're one of the things that are used a ton. And cashews give this wonderful kind of creamy quality, and they puree up really nicely, and they hold their structure and form really nicely. But what if you're allergic to tree nuts? Well, in a lot of ways, you might be a little bit out of luck when it comes to vegan cheese in many ways. So I think we're at a position now where we are going to have a boiling water here soon and cashews in. But if you are allergic to tree nuts, sometimes people will use potatoes. Sometimes people use tofu. And sometimes people just go ahead and eat dairy again for what it's worth. Everybody's got to kind of find their own way through and find their palate and find the tastes that kind of work best for them. So this water is just about boiling, and I'm just going to throw these cashews in, and I'm going to let them boil for just a minute or two, not too long. Again, if you were raw vegan, you wouldn't want to do this, but again, in the sense of time, in the sense of being practical in the kitchen, I'm just going to let them hang out here in the pan for a second, and I'll let you see what's kind of happening there. So you can see we've got fresh raw cashews, and a lot of times if I don't have too much time, I will do this. I'll just throw them in a little boiling water. My preference is always to to soak them overnight or for a couple hours. And usually I'll pour a little bit of boiling water just to, if I'm going to be soaking them or sort of slightly fermenting them, to inoculate them with my own lactobacillus as opposed to any mold or fungi that might be on the surface from processing. So again, I'll be talking a little bit about vegan yogurts at a future episode, but this would be one of the ways we start that process. And so I am going to just turn this off the stove here, and here we go, and we're going to just dump this out. I'm just going to show you all here. One of the things that I always like to point out is your cashews come in different portions, different sizes. So what I usually do, and I'm going to just show you all here on this angle, is that I will usually fill up the blender to the surface just above the cashews and add water from there in terms of how much extra thickness or thinness I want. So you should be able to kind of see we're just above the water level there. And again, for years I would measure, I'd be super precise, but actually this is what I have found has worked the best. Now, mind you, because we have not soaked these cashews, I'm going to need to do a little bit longer in the blender with them. So making this cashew cream does turn out to be one of those trickier things in terms of how this is made. And you can see here, it's kind of a moderate thickness. You can always make it a little bit thinner by adding a little bit more water, but cashew cream is really the basis from how all these wonderful vegan dishes are made. And you can get a sense there of its consistency, sort of rolling a bit. Yeah. So at any rate, so that is the cashew cream. And if you're making it from scratch, you technically don't have to rinse the blender. So the nice thing about it is if you've made your cashew cream in advance, then you're kind of at the position I'm at now. So let's talk a little bit about the ingredients from here. And I want you to just notice here, as I'm kind of trying to talk about kitchen flow, I've started this. Now I'm going to start the water for the pasta. So let's talk a little bit about different pasta options. So I know we sometimes have some gluten-free folks, so I wanted to include this chickpea fusilli, which is a completely gluten-free product. And let's see here, it's got plenty of protein in it, 4 servings per container. So again, this is something very reasonable. A lot of people are learning about gluten-free options. I'm admittedly still eating wheat, and I'm a purist when it comes to mac and cheese. And so you betcha, this is just plain old macaroni, and it's organic. It's from or non-GMO. It's what they had. So at any rate, this is what I love. So I'm going to just throw this macaroni into the boiling water here, and we'll let that kind of progress while we make the sauce. And you'll see, you know, this is a recipe you can actually make in a pretty quick amount of time. So let me try again. I have maxed out technology this week repeatedly. Let's try again and see if I can see if there's any questions I could answer about what's happening here. And let's see here. Let's get on this live feed. Nope, maxing out technology as always. Gotta love it. Okay, so any rate, so let me just show you what's happening here. We've got the pasta is now boiling. You can put a little bit of salt in the water or not. Again, it'll cook either way. So we're gonna just let that kind of pop along. So I'm gonna cut up this butternut squash, maybe just a little bit more. And I would say that we have about a 1-to-1 ratio of cashew cream to butternut squash, but for sake of measurement purposes, let's go ahead and measure it out in case anybody's curious. And we've got here just this beautiful butternut squash. If you're just joining, this is something that I was roasted in advance, 350 degrees in the oven. And we'll just throw that into there. And again, so we have all these wonderful qualities of the butternut squash. It's rich in beta carotene, it has fiber, it's relatively lower in calorie count, it's not a root vegetable, it's in season right now, so this is a wonderful meal, wonderful addition to anybody's palate. Now I wanted to point out here, let's see, there's a lot of different other things you can put into your vegan cheese sauce. And so this is going to be one of my favorite umami additions. It's miso paste. And again, I'm not huge on measuring, so I'm going to do a generous, maybe a tablespoon, and we'll just throw that in there. So miso is a fermented paste. And it typically is made from soy. So if you're soy-free, they do have chickpea. It's typically gluten-free as well. And again, this is something everybody, yeah, this is I was just looking to see which kind this is. This is a soy-based one. Now, if you know me, you know I also love to put in lemon into a lot of things. It adds a wonderful dimension of flavor. And I'll be checking the questions towards the end because of the way the phone is, when I open the app, the phone dies. So at any rate, we're gonna just throw in some lemon juice. I would say about a tablespoon or, you know, give or take to your own palate. So again, I'm gonna just pour that in here and got the seeds out. Now, what else can you put into your vegan cheese sauce? And this is kind of your classic nacho sauce. You can add a little bit of Dijon mustard. And again, this might be like half a teaspoon, and I'll put the recipes together more formally and share that with you. Some other things that you can put into this that I think sometimes are needed, although it's totally up to your personal preference, is a little bit of salt and a little bit of coriander. And I just wanted to show you here, this is what I do every week. I have an old coffee grinder, and I will grind up cumin and coriander together as a powder. And I find this is a wonderful way to add things to dishes with super fresh flavor. So we'll say about a teaspoon of cumin and coriander and about a teaspoon of salt. Sometimes I will add some smoked paprika, but again, just kind of keeping the taste a little bit simpler today. And folks, that's about it. So let's just recap here on how I've made this vegan mac and cheese today. So we have cashews that I actually boiled quickly instead of, you know, if you're super busy, you're like, I don't have time to soak cashews. That's crazy. So I have boiled them quickly. Then I started pureeing that. Then I restarted the water to boil it. And, you know, this is definitely something that I love. And sorry, my phone, I thought my phone was silenced, but nope. Let's try and turn that off. Okay. So, Let me start over. So cashews, we boiled the cashews, we filled the water just above the cashew level, and then we put the puree, high speed function on the blender for that. Then I've got butternut squash that's been cut up, and I've roasted the butternut squash. So there's lots of other ways when you have a whole big butternut squash that you can use that for other things. Then in addition to that, I have Dijon mustard, salt, miso paste, and lemon juice, and a little bit of cumin and coriander. And all of that goes into the blender now, which is pretty exciting when you're thinking about vegan mac and cheese. And then we can decide kind of from there, while all that's happening, my pasta is boiling. So my goal on these lives has been to kind of get you from zero to hero, right? All those funny marketing terms, but really in the space of eating within 20 minutes. And we're well on track to that, because I pretty much, if you had done the butternut squash in the morning. Now you can do this recipe if you don't have butternut squash, and you can add turmeric to just pure cashew cream with some carrots. You'd probably have to cook the carrots, but you could always boil those at the same time you're boiling the cashews. So again, there's a lot of different ways to get to that wonderful nuclear yellow-orange color that we all grew up with. And frankly, mac and cheese has been my go-to. I don't know if anybody else, you can say yes in the comments. Excuse me, yes, mac and cheese consistently has been one of my top 5 favorite foods. And when our family went really full-bore plant-based, mac and cheese was like, it moved out of the rotation. And that was kind of stressful, to be honest. Like, what do we do now? So I've been sort of playing around with recipes and ideas. So if you've got a variation of mac and cheese, put it in the comments and how you make it, because there's sort of artisanal quality to mac and cheese. And this is definitely one that's very creamy, as you're going to see here momentarily, as well as really flavorful. The butternut squash doesn't overpower the flavor, so you can really get this wonderful, delicious mac and cheese thing. So give me a sec. I'm going to go puree this and big unveil. We've got this beautiful mac and cheese, and I'm just going to show you the consistency, which is fantastic. Every time I make it, it's a little bit different, but of course this recipe is very forgiving. So you can see here, let's see if we can get a good view for you. Yeah, so you can see here it has this wonderful, very almost cheesy quality. And I'm making a mess, which is very characteristic for me. So again, let's see if I can maybe just show you this way. The camera will find it. Yeah, so you can see it has this wonderful consistency. And I've definitely grown to love vegan mac and cheese made this way. So again, if you kind of can see that, we've got this pretty thick sauce. And that's really basically, I had to add a little bit extra water, and I probably should have mentioned that. But again, so here we go. And in the last few minutes of the pasta, oftentimes, I'll just show you a little trick that I do here, is I will throw the steamer on top, just like this, and do a couple pieces of kale. Now, who would ruin kale? I mean, who would ruin mac and cheese with kale? Well, you know, sometimes I do. And again, you can see here, we'll just turn the heat down a little bit. And this is just a really quick way, again, sort of simplifying your cooking. And you can put a lid on that. And if I can find one, let's see here. And we'll just let that go for about a minute. And sometimes then what I'll do is mix the kale in or have it on the side. There's something just about the greens and the mac and cheese that reminds me of cooking and growing up in Virginia, some of the food that was of my youth. And I love to just sort of very partially cook the greens so they retain their beautiful, bright, brilliant green color. And I find that this steamer insert is one of the most indispensable elements in our kitchen. So again, just going to throw that on here so you can get a look at it. And let's get this out of the way here. Okay, that's tasting pretty darn good. So I'm going to drain the pasta. And we're just about done here. So I don't know if anybody is excited to have some vegan mac and cheese for lunch or dinner today. And here you can see this beautiful kale has this wonderful, vibrant green color, but it's been a little bit cooked. And so you can kind of just put that on the top or the side if you want. So let's drain this pasta. And you will see the finished product here shortly. Ooh, it's hot. Okay. All right, so now I don't know about you all, but I definitely grew up with just regular old Kraft mac and cheese. I can't even tell you probably how many bottles of Kraft mac and cheese I've eaten through the years. But let's take a look now here at how this looks. And you can see it's wonderfully thick. And we'll just stir that in. And you could add a little bit of turmeric if you had people that wanted really that bright, brilliant orange color. And maybe I have a little extra sauce in here, but that's all right. Now you have options from here. You can always do some panko breadcrumbs and bake it in the oven for a bit. You can freeze this. It freezes wonderfully. And so, you know, again, we've taken some time today to show you how to make one of my absolute all-time favorite dishes, which is vegan mac and cheese. And we'll keep that there for a second, and let's just pour this in here so you can get a sense of it. Yeah, maybe a little extra sauce, but again, that's a small price to pay for doing it on the fly here. But again, you can see, so we've got this wonderful texture. Now, what are the things you like to put on your mac and cheese? You can put hot sauce. I know some people in our family do tamarind, which is a beautiful spice chutney blend from India. And there's lots of different ways to kind of go about it and lots of different things. So now I'm going to take a look at the questions. And again, let me turn the volume down here. Let's see if there's any questions in particular. Great. So I think we've managed to kind of show you everybody how to do vegan mac and cheese today. And it's a wonderful addition to anyone's diet. It's delicious. And with the butternut squash in it, it does definitely give a better quality in terms of not being quite as calorie dense as the pure nut cheese based. And so just to recap, we had boiled some hot water, threw the cashews in, boiled them for a couple minutes, threw that in the blender, raised the water level to just above the cashews. Then we added butternut squash in a ratio of maybe 1-to-1 or a little bit more butternut squash than cashews. And then we had a little bit of salt, miso, Dijon mustard, cumin and coriander ground, and I think that's it. You could always put a little bit of pepper in. And then we had our pasta. And just a reminder, of course, anybody can do your choice of pasta. This is one that's vegan, gluten-free. It's a chickpea pasta. Has a little bit more a little bit more protein with the calories, which is kind of a nice option. So I always am excited and delighted to have people joining in and learning about some of these plant-based eating techniques. And if you're watching this after the live, feel free to throw your questions in the comments. I definitely circle back throughout the week and take a look at them. If you aren't aware, I do have a Facebook group, so just put #group if you want to be added to that. I'm doing more lives in the coming weeks and really trying to streamline some of the things that I've been learning for many years in the kitchen and offering those ideas to you. Also, if you can, take a moment, be kind to yourself, be kind to people in your life, and take care, and I'll see you next week. So thanks for joining in, everyone.